good to be back with you as we're continuing on through our series here. Excuse me, Game On. My name is Kevin Young. I have the privilege of serving at Christ's Table as lead clergy. If you are disillusioned, disappointed, disconnected, or done with the church or with Christianity or with other Christians, this may well be the place that you might be able to find some help and maybe even find a home. If you'd like to know more about us, you can visit the URL that is right up there, www.christtable.today. If you would like more information about this study in particular, then the URL right there in front of me, down there, opposite direction, right there at the bottom of the screen, go.christtable.today/gameon is where you're going to find all of the information in particular about this study. There you'll find a downloadable PDF of the study curriculum, of a youth and children's guide. If you want a printed copy of those, we actually do have printed copies of both of those. You can get those there. They come in this big box that includes both the curriculum, includes some other gifts along the way, also includes some, what are these, chess pieces that go along with the study, because that's what we're talking about the game of chess and how each one of these pieces have personalities and different strategies and strengths and weaknesses, just like we as human beings do as well, I suppose. So go.christtable.today/game on is where you can find all of that information. Today, on day 8 of this study, we find ourselves in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16. And Ruth, a 4-letter word, should not be a tongue twister, but it looks like it's just going to be one of those days for me as we jump into this study. So this week we have been talking about the second most powerful game piece on the board, which, when I found this out, was very shocking to me. It is the rook, which is the second most powerful game piece on the board. And over the last few days, we've been talking about why it is the most powerful game piece. I won't review any of that, but you can go back if you've not already done so and watch the previous study days on this, specifically, I think, day number 6 and day number 7. So the last 2 days. We're now in day number 8. But the rook is the second most powerful piece, especially strategically on the board. It can move in multiple directions, forward, backward, side to side, and it can move any number of spaces that are available in the direction in which you choose to move it, as long as there isn't something blocking the way. And so if there is an opponent's piece or one of your pieces in the way, then the rook becomes less helpful, which is why the rook is most helpful whenever the board is more clear or whenever the board is almost completely clear, and it helps in checkmate situations. Today, as we look at the rook, we're going to look at one of the ways in which the rook actually is uniquely able to do a few moves that are unique only to the rook and are extremely strategic in the game of chess. Now, you don't have to know anything about the game of chess to get something out of today's study. If you have the study guide, it's going to help you get a little bit more out of it. Again, you can get that at go.christtable.today/game on. But the thing we're going to talk about today for just a moment is the idea of castling. I mentioned that growing up, we used to call the rook the castle, which was a misnomer. But the rook does have a move that is called castling. It can be done with the queen, but primarily castling is done with the king, where these two pieces team up in such a way as to strengthen each other in the game. And so there is a lot of rules that kind of go around whether or not this castling is able to take place. I won't go through all of those, but I'll just essentially give you the highlights of whenever you're able to do it, what actually happens. So what happens in castling is the rook and the king come into proximity to each other. And there are a couple of things that happen here that aren't allowed to happen at any other time of the game. First of all, the king is only able to move one space, except in this move, the king can move more than one space. So in this castling move, the king is extraordinary in that he's able to move more than at any other time during the game of chess. The other thing that happens only in this castling is the rook is actually able to jump over the king and they trade places on the board. And so it is a very strategic move where the king and the rook are able to come together for protection of each other and also strategically in order to give them better leverage to advance against their opponent. And so castling is one of the key movements that happen in the game of chess, a very important move. Why is it done? Well, castling is done to increase the king's safety and give the rook a better position. Both of those things are strategic and important in the game of chess. Safety and better position strategically. It also moves the king from the vulnerable center of the board to a more protected spot. And so in that move, the rook actually helps the king survive by moving the king out of the original space in which it begins on the board, which is quite a vulnerable position. It also is considered one of the most crucial moves in the game of chess. Maybe you've heard of castling, maybe you haven't, but if you know anything about the game of chess and strategy, castling is one of the most important moves in the game of chess. So why would you do that? Well, you would do that in order to protect and take care of the king, in order to give the rook more strength. And I think that there is a lot of application in that idea of working together in order to enable us to have more strength. Strength is found in numbers. You know, what's the phrase say? United we stand, divided we fall. And also strategically, the Bible says this, I think in Ecclesiastes, that the two heads or two minds are better than one. And so what you have here is a great situation that is stronger than being apart, than being together and working together. And I think that there is application for that in our own lives. And maybe you've already read the CG, as we used to call it back in the day in media. Perhaps you've already read that true strength sometimes means repositioning ourselves to better protect what matters most. There may be moments in your life where you have had to reposition yourself literally in a different city, in a different job, in a different relationship or marriage situation in order to better protect what mattered most to you. I think sometimes, though, that obviously happens symbolically, metaphorically as well, where oftentimes we have to reposition ourselves, rethink who we are, adjust who we are, what our values are, what we're going after, in order to better protect the things that matter most in our lives. Many of us do this with our children. Many of us do this with our finances. Many of us do this with our goals. Many of us do this with multiple different areas in our life where we will assess the situation. We will identify a way in which we should reposition ourselves that will be more helpful, more strategic, maybe help others out around us. And then we will do that. Maybe sometimes that is for our own protection, our own good, and maybe oftentimes that's for somebody else's. There have been many times throughout the years where I have moved, I've changed, I have repositioned myself in order to better protect not just me, but also to better protect other people in my life as well. There's this phenomenal story in the Old Testament. It may be familiar to you, but it's the story of Ruth. And I know that today we only have one verse in Ruth chapter 1, verse 16. If you can read around that verse, read around that verse. If you can read the entire book of Ruth, I might even encourage you to go ahead and read the entire book of Ruth. It is an amazing story, and I wish I could get into all of the nuances of the story of Ruth. But essentially, we have a character, a mother named Naomi, who moves away from her homeland with her husband and with her sons. Two of her sons, her only two sons, remarry in a foreign land to people who were not accepted by the folks in her homeland. So probably nobody from back home was coming to her sons' weddings. Nobody from back home was probably sending gifts to her sons' weddings because they had married folks who were less than, who were considered to be animals, dogs, unrighteous. But Ruth, her husband, and her sons and their wives are enjoying a wonderful experience living away from her homeland until they aren't. The husband dies, both of the sons die, and Ruth and the daughters-in-law are now left alone. In those days, being a single woman, especially having been a single woman who had previously been married, was perhaps one of the worst situations that you could be in. You had no ability to provide for yourself. Nobody was going to take care of you. You would have been used goods, so remarriage would have been highly unlikely, and Naomi probably would have had a difficult time being accepted. So Naomi decides to return back to her homeland, but the two girls who were there, one of which is Ruth, the daughters-in-law, Naomi says, "Go on about your way. If you come back with me, there's not going to be anything there for you. I'm going to hope that my people will take care of me, but I can't take care of you. I won't be able to help you survive. So you need to go back to your homes. You need to go back to other people, and you need to find a way to continue to live, and we will part ways." And Ruth, one of the daughters-in-law, says, "Wherever you go, I'm going to go. Wherever you stay, I'm going to stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God." Naomi is blessed. And if you read the story, you'll see this, that Naomi is blessed by Ruth's willingness to reposition herself and what she could accomplish, what she could get, what she could do on her own in order to see her life as being connected long-term to Naomi. She sees herself as having responsibility for Naomi. And so she stays with Naomi, travels back to the homeland, and it's a wonderful, beautiful story of family and of redemption because Ruth made a decision to not just think about her own safety, but also think about the safety of those around her. To not just think of the blessings that could be in her life, but to also think about how she might be a blessing to other people as well. The game of chess, repositioning yourself brings strength. It brings safety to the king and to the rook. It is a unique firebrand combo that is almost of uttermost importance in the game of chess to being able to move forward in the game and succeed. And I would suggest that in the game of life as well, that there is profound importance of always being on the lookout and how we can reposition ourselves alongside other people in order to not just get more and better for us, but to also provide safety, protection, resources, and help those around us as well succeed at the game of life. So before we go today, and I hope that you will look at the curriculum, I hope that you will, we got the wrong graphic here. I hope that you will look up at the I hope that you will look at the curriculum. I hope that you will dive a little bit deeper into this study. Here's the one that I wanted. One of the questions that's in the curriculum, there are more that are in there, but one of them, where do you need to practice the strategic vulnerability of castling with someone that you trust? And so reflect back on this idea of castling. If you're not yet fully sure of what it means, go ahead and just Google the word castling, and there will be a wealth of information there for you on what that means and how to understand it better. And then it will be very easy for you to transport that, I think, into your own life about practicing vulnerability for you in order to castle with somebody else that you trust and maybe a mutually beneficial relationship. All right. Several tongue twisters in there today. Book of Ruth, a great book. Well, it's been good to be with you today. Look forward to being back with you tomorrow as we continue on the study and as we continue to look at the rook this week. But until that time,